Let's take that story further now, and we're joined by the African Defence Review's Director, Darren Olivier. Darren, a very good evening to you. Welcome to News at Prime. So, not Justice Minister, pardon me, the Defence Minister, Thandi Modise, is saying that what basically happened here with the Lady R is that it was delivering equipment from the pre-COVID period, which could not be delivered because of the global lockdowns. Why was that explanation not given at the onset of what the Americans had claimed, if it is true?
Good evening. That's a very good question. First of all, that information was given fairly early on, but only after a gap of about 2 or 3 weeks when the ship first arrived. So there was a time of complete silence, complete denial that anything had really happened. The ship had docked and there was no news. But then about, I think, 2 weeks after the actual incident, the minister did say that it was for an old order. So that part is itself not anything new. We know that the ship was delivering something to the SANDF. The information suggests that it was ammunition for for certain parts of it. Again, the question is still up in the air: is what, if anything, was loaded back onto it to return to Russia?
And as you're saying, the minister had already advanced this explanation during the budget vote for her department. This was in May. If the Lady R was delivering this equipment, do we now need to know what kind of equipment that was? And B, if it was, yes, delivering equipment, would that automatically mean that it didn't pick anything up? Because it may have returned with another load, could it not?
Well, that's the thing. So, first of all, there was a level of secrecy surrounding the ship that is not justifiable just based on the fact that it was delivering something to the SANDF. It arrived in our waters, turned off its transponder, basically entered the port in darkness. It entered a military port rather than a regular, for example, Cape Town Harbour. So the entire thing was done with a really unnecessary level of secrecy. We have a pretty good idea of what was delivered. We believe it's also ammunition for the special forces who do use Russian caliber equipment at times. So that part is, perhaps not as secretive, and there's a question again as to why government is not willing to actually be open about that. So that's the reason for the ship being here. The big question, though, is there are photographs of activity around the ship over those few days that I was here. We know that there were container loads that were taken off the ship and taken elsewhere, to the SANDF depot. There's also photographs that suggest that something was loaded back onto the ship again. So various pallets that were loaded by crane onto it. And this is where the question arises, what was loaded onto it and why? And as long as there's sort of secrecy around this and secrecy around the inquiry, we have no way of knowing for certain actually whether anything was loaded back onto it or not. And again, nobody knows what it might have been, only that, the imagery so far suggests that something was loaded back onto it.
And you mentioned something there about the secrecy in the handling of this whole affair. We know that the actual report or the findings of the report will not be made public. We'll only hear what President Ramaphosa intends to do as far as remedial action, for instance. What does that mean then for long-term faith in the South African government, what is and is not true in this matter, and how it was handled, given that we will never have sight of that report?
Well, that's the thing. And this is not a case where I think anybody can trust the outcome because of the secrecy surrounding this and the fact that the report, which should be made public, should be transparent, is being kept completely secret. I mean, even to the point of the terms of reference. As the public, we can't trust that everything is above board when this is the way that the government is going about this, especially given, as I said, the fact that the ship's arrival was shrouded in deception in and of itself. The entire claim, turning off a transponder, arriving at night, unloading and loading in darkness. These are all highly unusual activities and not something that you do if you have nothing to hide. So in this case, yes, the fact that the report is going to remain secret means we absolutely cannot trust the outcome.
How likely is it that there may have been weapons or other material loaded onto the vessel destined for Russia without the knowledge of top-level people in the SANDF or even cabinet and the presidency?
It's very unlikely. So first of all, bear in mind, we don't know for certain that there were any weaponry or any weapons or ammunition or anything similar loaded back on. This is the reason why we're asking for transparency, to get to the bottom of exactly what did happen. Right now, there's indications towards that, but no actual evidence. That being said, though, I mean, this is the SA Navy's main base. There was a high level of security around the base. There were high level approvals clearly given for that ship to enter our waters and to dock. There is no way that anything was done around that ship without knowledge of, very, very high level people in the SANDF and in government. So, the theory being advanced that this all happened under the radar, I think, is completely inaccurate.
But could it really be, Darren, that this is merely a case of poor communication by government or not knowing exactly what's going on within its own household, so to speak, where indeed nothing illegal had happened and all that was being delivered were these weapons delivered before COVID, and someone lost track of the process, and that's why we didn't get a coherent response during the first few days of what was being alleged by Ambassador Brigety, and that, in fact, all that's happened is that it was poorly communicated.
I think that might have been a fair excuse in the first few weeks after the ship arrived, because there were many questions raised by local media and various MPs questioning what happened. And there was an opportunity at that stage for the Minister of Defence and others to dig into what happened, to find out, to go and get the records, get the manifests, get everything, that even get footage from the cameras at the base. To still, months and months later, be uncertain about what happened is, I think, impossible. Unless, for that to happen, there had to be such a massive directive of duty involved that alone would be worrying. So I don't think it's likely. It's entirely possible that government is being secretive for no good reason. This wouldn't be the first time. But again, given what's happened and given the way this has been handled, the only way for the government to give us trust in the way it's handling this and to trust that nothing untoward happened is to be open about the process, to open up the findings of the inquiry, to open up some of the raw evidence available. Mm-hmm. And that can be done in a way that doesn't actually hinder the security of the Navy. But the current approach is definitely not one in which we can trust government on this.
What way would that be where you say the disclosures can be made without hindering, if you will, sensitivities around security where the military and the country are concerned?
So an example I can give was the inquiry around the Gupta landing at Air Force Base Waterkloof, where what was actually released to the public did not contain any detail specifically about the security measures around the base, for example, and any similar aspects of it. So what was only released was issues around the procedures and the processes, which should not in and of themselves be that secret. The government and SANDF have a habit of being overly cautious around classifying items and material. Over the last 10 years, we've seen less and less transparency on that front. But again, there's a certain amount of information that can be provided, such as information on the basic procedures, the manifest, even some footage from the cameras that can be done in a way that does not actually harm security. Again, Summerstown Naval Base is not exactly hidden; it's in full view of the public. So there are aspects of it that are already not secret. So to believe that nothing can be shared is, I think, inaccurate.
Darren Olivier, good to speak to you from the African Defence Review.